Welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Conversation. I'm Dusty White. I'm here with Pastor Bob Thune of Coram Deo Church and Pastor Chris Hemmelman of First City Church. And every Wednesday, we sit down to talk about how the gospel of Jesus Christ connects to the questions and issues of everyday life. And today, we're talking about Gen Z and spiritual renewal.
Hey, we finally get to talk about an encouraging topic on this podcast instead of talking about war and de-churching and everything
Negative
falling
things.
apart, the world falling apart,
Gen Z is where it's at, guys.
kids walking away from the faith and all that kind of stuff. So recently being October 9th, 2023, there's a post on the Gospel Coalition. 5 reasons Gen Z is primed for spiritual renewal. The authors are Kyle Richter and Patrick Miller. I kind of know of these guys. I've not spent a lot of time with them personally, but they're both pastors in Columbia, Missouri. Dusty, I think you sent us this article. I was like, hey, this is encouraging. You guys should read this.
I did. It was encouraging to me because I have kids in this bracket who are experiencing some spiritual renewal among their peers. So that was fun. And then we read this with our church staff team a couple of weeks back, and it led to some good dialogue.
And so we brought a guest on the podcast today. We were like,
Whoa, really?
Hey, you know what? We're not Gen Z. But
so we're like, do we know anybody? Do we know anybody?
Welcome, E.Beth Hemphill, to the Wednesday Conversation.
Thank you.
E.Beth is our communications
Gen Z
guru
rep.
and also our Gen Z, one of the Gen Z reps on the Coram Deo staff team. What are the boundaries of Gen Z?
1997 to 2012. So 26 years old, which is me,
That's
to
like
11 years old. So it's a pretty.
You're like on the outer end of that.
I refer to this as I'm a geriatric Gen Z.
Yeah, you're almost a millennial.
Wow.
So like really riding the edge.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is all, and like you said, your kids, my kids are in this bracket. I don't even know who comes up with these names. How did they get the Z?
Somebody decides.
Because they were all on Zoom for school.
Because there isn't a generation Y, right?
I don't know.
X, millennial,
Yeah,
We
and
skipped
then
it.
Z.
Gen Y might be after Gen Z, like 2011 and
Oh yeah, possibly.
smaller.
So thanks for representing Gen Z on the podcast today,
Yep.
Beth. There's a whole generation gap between us and you. I'm Generation X. I don't know. I guess you guys
Yeah,
are too. So
Same.
So there's no millennials in the room. Just we went Gen X and we just went, let's just go grab a Gen Z representative. Now, let me just mention as a writer, anytime you see a headline that's 5 reasons for X, what that tells you is some editor was like, hey, you know what you should write is a piece that's 5 reasons for, you know this, E.Beth, because you're like all about SEO.
It's always an odd number.
Yeah.
It has to be above 3.
Yeah.
But beneath 11. Like nobody's gonna read like 13 reasons. You know.
Yeah.
So 5 is like perfect.
So what I'm saying is, like, I guarantee what happened is these pastors were like, hey, we're seeing some cool things among Gen Z. And some editor was like, hey, would you write a piece about that and make it 5 reasons?
So why the odd number?
Have you ever like seen an article that's like 4 reasons for something or 2?
No, I didn't even.
Yeah.
Now that you mentioned it, I'm like, wow, that's true. It's always an odd number.
If you A/B test an article, if it was like 6 reasons versus 5 will win.
it's something about the human psyche.
Yep.
It's the same reason why if you're decorating your house, you got to have 3 candles, but not 2 or not 4.
Yeah. So there's something about odd numbers that feel a little bit more final or have like a nice end cap on them.
You trust it. You just trust a 5.
Listeners, if you know the reason why the odd numbers work, please email podcast.
I'm so intrigued now.
We
5 is
want to
good.
know.
5 was my baseball number, so I'm going with it.
Wow. Okay. So
Mine was 11, odd number.
there you go. Odd number.
Overachiever.
So these authors want to convince you and convince us that Generation Z is primed for spiritual renewal, that actually some of the things that are happening among younger generations are really encouraging and should be really encouraging to Christians. All of us, especially if you listen to this podcast, we talk a lot about like cultural dynamics that are maybe either discouraging or challenging. And so you're probably, if you're a listener to the Wednesday Conversation, you're like, oh yeah, man, the world's really falling apart out there. Hope the church can make it. We have some good news for you.
Wow.
Man, Gen Z, the Holy Spirit is at work.
That's right.
This is encouraging. So I want to just walk through the 5 reasons that they identify that they feel. And these Kyle Richter works with college students. There's a big college ministry at the Crossing in Columbia that's hundreds of college students. And so he's sort of writing with firsthand knowledge of what he's seeing in his church. And basically what he says is, hey, I've talked with a bunch of other people that work in college age ministry. And this isn't unique to our church. There's some really interesting things happening across the country. Now, he says, some will urge caution before drawing conclusions. Isn't this the era of de-churching, deconstruction, and rising nuns? But data lags behind reality, and we don't want the church to miss what may be happening. In the wake of the Asbury revival last spring, it looks as though the Holy Spirit is priming the souls of hundreds of thousands of teenagers and young adults for renewal. So I think it's interesting. They're saying, hey, we're seeing this. It's a real thing. I don't have I don't have data. I don't have like sociological crosstab data, but I have evidence that this is happening. All right, let me give you the 5 reasons they say Gen Z is primed for spiritual renewal. Number 1, isolation during the pandemic created a hunger for belonging. Number 2, disillusionment with ineffective, abusive, hypocritical leaders is creating a hunger for sincere, humble, transparent leadership. Number 3, pervasive anxiety is creating a hunger for deep peace. Number 4, digital self-projection and self-perfection are creating a longing for real, non-judgmental sincerity. And number 5, the loss of places of belonging is creating a hunger for healthy institutions where Gen Z can find mentors. All right, so which of these have you seen most clearly in people that you know? Like, which of these would you say, yep, this one's definitely the case? Because anytime somebody lays out 5 things, I'm like, oh, maybe all 5 are true. But which one would you say you've seen most clearly, E.Beth?
The 4th one. So the idea of digital self-projection and self-perfection, creating a longing for real life, like just relationships. So the idea of authenticity is like huge, but like it's all on social media specifically. I feel like I see all these a lot framed and influenced by social media, which is kind of like, if you read this article, it's not overt, but it's there. And what I notice about that one is like even sad moments where people claim to be authentic on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, are very curated, where you're like, how did you have a video of yourself crying? Like enough to make a compilation.
Yeah.
Right. So you're like,
I didn't know people, I'm not on there enough.
Oh
but
man. Yeah.
People have videos of themselves crying.
Yes. Which
wow.
And it's very like, it's very odd to be like, even your own personal real life emotional moments are being captured on camera. And so that one, I can see how, especially people who are teenagers and are like, this is what I'm seeing as normal, and coming from adults who are being influenced by social media trends from Gen Z. So these are millennials. These are, your generation, like boomers even, like who are social media savvy. It's like, it's just very curated. So the idea of authenticity, I think, is one thing where they, even when they think people they look up to, influencers, are being authentic, they don't even see past that and see that that is curated as well. So that's just something I've noticed.
So you think that does create a longing for real relationship?
Because I think people feel that something is off about that, but they don't know. But they're like kind of internal, like why does all of this feel so sad and feel so hard to understand? Because they are not noticing that this emotion that's being portrayed to them is also inauthentic. And so they're like, what's my disconnect? Why can't I feel these true emotions if that's what authenticity is supposed to look like? They just it's something they're like, what is real? Like when they experience that, they're like, okay, I can see how this is different than what I'm seeing on social media.
I think for me, it's number 5. As I've observed my oldest son going to college and last year and meeting some guys, it was very low bar for people to be invited to church, for him to have influence on his peers and experience baptism among one of his roommates. It just seemed very ripe and low bar it was just like, there weren't a lot of barriers for a place to belong. And I think they're hungry for healthy institutions where Gen Z can find mentors. When they mention that in number 5, that reminds me of Titus, where people are looking for spiritual fathers need to have spiritual sons. And I think that's different than the moment we were just in. I think we were saying as church leaders, even like, well, we can't be everybody's dad, so like, it's kind of up to you, Chris, to mature and grow up and seek out all of that stuff for yourself. I think now it's actually, no, we need to just go be spiritual fathers, and they're hungry to be led.
It's interesting that the authors say that Gen X was cynical about institutions. The millennials deconstructed institutions, but Gen Z just doesn't really have an interest in institutions. And they say that lack of interest is good because it means they're not starting from a place of negativity or cynicism or wanting to tear things down. They're starting from like, I don't care, as long as I can find a mentor, is like I'm willing to move toward this institution if it's a place where I can find meaningful engagement.
If you were to sort of take a singular thread through all 5 of these, I'd put it in connection, like a sincere, genuine connectivity. So if you think of, the pandemic, hunger for belonging, even the sense of leadership, like why do you want your leaders to be humble and transparent? Because there's a authenticity of connection there. Peace, but that peace is coming from, again, sense of connection. So if you kind of look at the through line of all 5 of these, absolutely see this. I think of the Gen Z at our church that aren't in their parents' home, those are independent, are largely men at First City Church. And if the thing that just immediately jumps out when they come is like, I just want genuine relationships with other men. Like there is a fatherlessness, there's a friendlessness, and if they experience that, it's just like, boom, you got them. So seeing kind of the overarching thread in this, it's like 100% with this article.
E.Beth, would you say, like, what can you talk about among people like your friends in life and your peers, the geriatric Gen Z folks? What do you see that sort of anecdotally suggests that there is a hunger for spiritual renewal? I guess I want to ask, like, these authors seem to say, yeah, it's a hunger for spiritual renewal, not just belonging, friendship, relationship, connection. I think all those things the church provides all of those things in really meaningful ways. But I'm curious, but convince me that it's actually about a spiritual longing and not just about like, yeah, I want to know that people are real instead of fake.
So anxiety feels like an obvious answer, but it's like my friends, even those who are believers, but especially those who are not, are just like perpetually anxious. And in here it says like, Gen Z is hungry for the very things the empty, desiccated temples of secularism, consumerism, and global digital media cannot provide, but which Jesus can. So what makes me think that they're primed for spiritual renewal is that they have tried literally everything else in a way that is, you could say that for any generation, any human, but when every possible answer is at your fingertips all the time and you've literally tried all of them, it's like, there kind of becomes a point where they're like, where spirituality or some sense of religious comfort is there, but where we know it's like they're primed for spiritual renewal because the only thing that can satisfy this is Jesus. And so anecdotally, I think even my time in college when I was a senior, so then everyone younger than me would have been for sure Gen Z, is it was just like nobody was confident in leading with a thought or an opinion because they were so worried that it wasn't going to be like what everyone else thought. And not,
plus somebody's going to record it and put it on TikTok and make fun of them.
Yeah, where it's like, and I was also in journalism school, right? So it's like, if you're going to if you're going to get canceled anywhere in college, it's going to be there in journalism school. And it was like, I'm not going to say what I actually think because I need to hear what other people are saying about this first. And so there's just like this perpetual anxiety was just like, it's like in school and everything where you're like, I'm discussion boards. I'm not even going to give real answers. I'm going to play it safe because the worst thing that could happen to me is just that like people will think I am, I don't know, like hateful or like, I don't even know. I just think the anxiety is like, of course this generation is primed for spiritual renewal. Like the church needs to capitalize on that because we know that the only answer that can help them is like what we have,
That reminds me of Parker's experience when he was getting his master's. Like everything she was just saying was what he said to you about like, well, I just kind of need to do the thing to get the degree.
Yeah. There's a lot of self-censorship because you know that like, well, there's a party line you just have to say in order to do the thing and, get through the school. Yeah. And it very much is sort of like a self-censorship, I guess is the best way of saying it, because who knows if the idea I would put out there anyway is going to be loved or hated.
Yeah. Like there's wisdom in that too, where you're like, you have to draw a line of, here's where I would for sure speak up, say something, risk, not even not being enjoyed by the people around me, but being like kicked out of something. And then just, man, that's just a really different opinion than I have. And I just got to bite my tongue.
Which leads me to a deeper spiritual hunger.
Yep.
Which gets me to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And the church.
So I have a question kind of similar and related to what Bob asked. So one of the things that I've been curious with is I've engaged a number of Gen Z, again, particularly guys, and even what's reflected in here is there's a hunger for something. Mm-hmm. And often when I'm in the conversation, what would occur to me is, man, you want Jesus to do something for you. Like you were saying, they're trying these different things and they want this effect, whether it's peace or sense of connection. But the thing that I'm asking myself is, do they understand that it's not just about getting something from Jesus? There's actually submitting your life, like that Jesus is king. So in your experience, or what would you say to a pastor like me who's trying to help someone from Gen Z come to this realization that, hey, the gospel isn't, look at all that Jesus can do for you, which he does, all of those things. But it really is about following him, you're submitting yourself to someone above you. So how to give me some wisdom on how to navigate that kind of conversation.
Well, one, I think with men in our generation, one of the things you have to know about Gen Z is that, and I mentioned this one time, is that pretty much their whole lives, people have expected less of them than generations before. Like, good or bad, people have tried to make things easier, whether it's parents or teachers. Digital school has done this, all of these types of things where life is just easier. So especially with men, I notice, who are my age and younger, calling them to something greater that is harder than, even if you're like, I don't know that you'll be able to do this well, but I'm going to be the one to challenge you to do this. I feel like, one, that helps in just character development. Two, that helps them see a need and there are a lot of things that I can't do on my own. I need to stretch myself. Nobody's ever pushed me. Nobody's ever expected much of me. So within the church, I feel like that looks like encouraging men to be that and to lead in that way. As a pastor too. And then, because a lot of that is just, if things come so easily to you, of course, Jesus he's just going to give you things. And there's nothing expected in return until you understand that pretty much just on your own, you're not, I'm not, life is not as easy as I thought it was, and I'm not as great as I thought I was. But also at the same time, I don't feel like I'm great. I feel kind of anxious and depressed and whatever. Yeah. But I think just calling, because if Gen Z goes down to 11 years old, that's pretty formative ages still, right? Where people my age, we're out of the house, we're married, we're doing other things. But 11, 12, 13, give people hard tasks, expect big things of sons and daughters and, kids. So that's what I'd say.
E.Beth, do you think the future of Gen Z is more digital or less digital? Like, is there a backlash against digital, or is it just sort of like, this is the world we live in now, we kind of all have to be on the Instagram doing all the things?
It's the same amount of digital, because that's, even in the way, if you take out social, digital is here to stay, commerce-wise, just the way that we relate to people outside of our own vicinity, different countries, all those different things. But what is going to change is, if you think about it, these are the next couple years where we'll start to see Gen Z as parents. I was thinking about this. I got Facebook when I was in 8th grade, but my parents had never had social media, right? So they're like, we don't know the possibilities of Facebook. Also, it was different. I had to be on the desktop computer. I had 15 minutes, right? You message a friend and hope they message you back in 15 minutes. Otherwise, I'll see you at school tomorrow, whatever. Different than an 11-year-old who has a phone in their pocket. They
shouldn't, because they're only 11.
Yeah,
no phones in their pockets.
No phones.
Different podcast.
But what I'm thinking is, since I've grown up with social media and with digital influence, that will change the way that I parent. And for most people, I think that will make them stricter. I think that they will still allow digital influence, because they'll understand that's pretty much impossible in today's world to get away from. But people my age, Christian or not, this is very anecdotal. I remember when I was in college and I worked in daycares, and when I, nannied, that was the thing. It was like, no, my kids will not have access to this for a long time. I feel like it's going to be easier for Gen Z parents to say no, because they understand the implications of not just being on social media, but growing up with that digital influence. And that point number 4 in here of digital self-projection and curation. And it's like it's just not healthy. And we've felt that growing up. And so I think you go, yeah, naturally I'm going to try to protect my kids from that. So I think that's one encouragement that I see from Gen Z, especially those who are Christians, is there's just it's easy to say, yeah, my kids are going to miss out, but they're also going to miss out on, 100% access to pornography and music that I don't want them to listen to, or like bullying and, just being influenced to buy a bunch of stuff. So yeah, they're going to miss out, but I think it's okay on what they're missing out on.
And there's a bunch of non-Christians that have that same sentiment. I mean, you see all sorts of articles right now on how even the secular world and the culture are saying, hey, actually, guys, hey, heads up, phones are kind of bad for anybody younger than 8th grade.
Yeah. I'm also curious, E.Beth, do you feel like the connection between that persistent anxiety you were talking about and digital media, how strong is that connection? I feel like there's people like Gene Twenge who have said, like, you can absolutely document that those two things are related. I'm just curious, like, again, anecdotally, what do you see being the connection of the sort of like very online social media driven universe feeding some sense of sort of the anxiety?
Well, one, I see the connection 100%, whether I've deleted social media, because I've done like a 2-year complete hiatus, noticed a huge difference. And then when I came back, it really changed the way that I interacted when it came back. But one I would say is access to information. And you can find a million studies on this, but like we just can't know, even adults cannot know all of the things that are going on in the world all at once with this much information. So especially not kids, too. You're being exposed when you think about like the comparison trap that middle schoolers and high schoolers across every generation have gone through. Is not only are you comparing yourself to the people that you actually physically see every day, but there are hundreds and hundreds. And then if you can do reels or TikToks, those are literally never ending. So thousands potentially of other people. And the algorithm knows you, so they know your age. So they're going to give you people who are your age or in the same life stage. And so it's like, that's anxiety right there. It's immediate comparison. Everything is also advertisement. This is when I was talking earlier about they can't see through the curation. It's the same thing with ads. They're not marked. They don't, it's not a pause in your TV show where you're like, clearly I'm watching advertisements. I can walk away and do whatever. It's like this girl that I follow in her skincare routine. Well, this just looks like a fun little get ready with me video, but she's being paid to feature all of these products. But if you're 14 years old, you don't notice that. You don't see that. And so that's anxiety. When you're being sold to all the time, but you don't know, that is giving you anxiety because it's taking a need and like pressing your thumb into it. But when you're Gen Z, I still am like, now though I'm, pregnant and it's baby products. And I'm like, if I don't get this, is this going to be, oh no, and I'm like, wait. One, what are they trying to do? But when you're young, you don't know. You don't ask the question, is somebody trying to sell me something? Or what does this person gain if I do what they're asking me to do? Only adults can do that. Even adults aren't good at that.
And so what I hear you saying there is like, you even have to work at that being a conscious decision.
Yeah.
And we're all doing that, but especially Gen Z has to do extra work there.
You know what we're selling on this podcast?
The Lord.
Snacks.
Nothing. That's what I like to say.
Dusty's
this podcast
voice
is sponsored by no one, so
and
we can keep it free from those
noticing
influences.
that the one time I'm on this podcast, there are no snacks. So that's kind of
It's
that's
Chris's
messed
fault.
up.
You should be
Crazy.
disappointed.
It's Chris's fault.
I
I'm
go
sorry.
away for a month and the snack game just falls
People
off
stop
the
feeding.
cliff. Yeah.
It's okay.
I'm sorry that you are not experiencing snacks right now. That is a
I almost
failure.
left,
Failure
but
on
it's
the
fine.
part of our listeners, and I want them to feel rebuked.
What do you guys think about the pandemic creating a hunger for belonging? Is that the case for everybody, or is that the case specifically for Gen Z in a particular way?
I mean, I do think it's somewhat particular. Now, I think the pandemic is going to have ongoing effects for everybody who went through it. I was just talking to somebody who said that kids, like young kids, are now coming into school who went through the pandemic at age 2 or 3, and like teachers are noticing like, oh man, these kids have some serious gaps in their readiness for school. So I think you're seeing it across the board. But Dusty, like my daughter graduated from high school during a pandemic. It was really hard because it was like she didn't have a normal graduation. You know, and I think people just feel like, oh yeah, that was kind of a sucky time to go through life.
Yeah.
And so there's this desire of like, well, let's never go back to that. Like whatever that was, I think it really did surface a reality of like, oh, it's good to be connected to people. It's good to be able to be face to face with people. It's good to belong. And it does seem to me like there is a connection there for especially the older cohort of Gen Z that having had that experience of really deep isolation, it makes the hunger for belonging a little stronger.
And if you think about if there's already a distrust in institutions or like a general, just like, I don't really care. And during COVID, I think about like college ministries and different things like that, that pretty much died because they couldn't meet and are now having to be rebuilt. Well, if there's no buy-in for the importance of institutions from the generation who's supposed to be helping rebuild the institutions, like you're going to be at a little bit of like we're just kind of at neutral. And so I think that's part of it. So that's the unique aspect for Gen Z is that they are supposed to be in the most social time of their life during the pandemic. And now they're left to help rebuild a thing that they don't know if they believe in, you know? And so that'd be a big thing. But then also there's the invitation for churches to step in and say, you know, not at least they're just neutral toward institutions, right? Like we can help rebuild this stuff. We can help create a place for community and connection if we know you're not engaged anywhere else. And you know, through just quality relationships and discipleship, that should flourish.
E.Beth, besides your exhortation to us earlier about like, hey, call dudes in Gen Z to more, what are some other things that church leaders need to hear, us around this table as your pastors, but just in general for those other people who are listening in? What are some other things that us old guys, if you will, air quotes,
Old heads,
just need to know, like where you're just kind of like, guys, if you would just do this, it'd be pretty easy.
Yeah. Well, one I was thinking about this, Gen Z is like generations are just things that we have put in place, right? Where it's like
they're not in the Bible.
Gen Z are God's people, right? So the lost ones, the found ones, all of them. Don't be afraid of Gen Z just because their world is so different than yours. I think about student ministry or just your role as pastors where you're like, hey, just approach Gen Z as Gen Z. Like the context for how they're growing up, their digital landscape, all those things are helpful in relating to them, but it doesn't change the way that we interact with them. You know what I mean?
So what you're saying is I don't need to get a cool Instagram account to impress all the young kids in Gen Z to talk to them.
Because they're also the most judgmental and they'll call you chuggy. But even that word is out. They'll call you other things. Like the worst thing that Gen Z can be is cringy. Like they don't like to have people do cringy things around them. And they don't even want that. They probably don't even like the word cringy, right? But it's just it's the obsession with, it's not just my digital presence, it's also my regular presence. So you should not try to have a cool Instagram or something.
They can see through any posturing, any sense of attempt to, hey, I'm trying to connect with you, and this is not how I normally am. Yeah, I'm just trying to connect with you.
Yeah. So don't try to be relevant to Gen Z. Accept your fate. Accept the fact that they probably think you're uncool, but that doesn't mean they don't respect you and that they won't listen to you. I think that's the problem. Is you're like, don't try to be cool to young kids. Just bring the gospel because the gospel's cool.
Thank you for saying that.
And that actually jives with how they're looking for mentors. Yeah. Because they're actually just looking for you to be yourself in whatever age bracket you are.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that.
That's good news for you and me, Bob.
What we should have been doing all along. Just be yourself. It is good news. Thankfully, since you and I have kids that are Gen Z, we're not under the impression that we're cool in any way. So
yeah, that's just humbling, right?
We
there.
have kids to keep us real, man. Mm-hmm. I want listeners to be encouraged that God is doing things among younger generations and among the younger people in your church and in the church, because I think that sometimes with the reality of everybody being so online and with the whole like massive information that you were talking about, E.Beth, I think people can start to sort of get very pessimistic about like, is the Lord at work? What's going to happen to my kids? We talked a few weeks ago about, de-churching beginning at home. And so I think there's parents even, they're like, man, are my kids going to be okay? Are they going to make it? The good news is like, yeah, hey, your kids are actually primed for spiritual renewal. And God's doing some really powerful things among them. And I think that's good news for the church, but also, like you said, Chris and E.Beth, invites us to a certain kind of leadership and mentorship and pursuit. So let's not miss the opportunity to celebrate what God is doing among Gen Z, to speak vision and honor into them in ways that they deserve it, and to sort of invite them and call them forward into the future of leadership in the church, because we want to see God do powerful things among this group of people. And I like what you said, E.Beth, that like, sometimes I don't like even to talk in terms of generations because it feels very markety. It feels like advertisers looking for like the 18 to 25 and the 25. It's like they're carving everybody up into decades anyway. And so I just like thinking about people as human beings. Yeah. But I do think it's helpful sometimes to think about the ways that they differ.
Well, and think, when you all were in high school, did you even know what generation you were a part of?
No.
Like, did you
self-consciously?
Was that language that you use all the time? Whereas Gen Z now is so aware of the fact that they are Gen Z.
I was part of the hip hop generation, E.Beth.
That's the only generation that matters. The difference.
So
that's important, to think they're inundated too with like, I am Gen Z. This is who Gen Z is. It's part of their identity because we've made it part of their identity too.
So this article highlights they're not cynical about institutions. Is that a general non-cynicism overall? Would you say that that's kind of just in general, there's not the same cynicism as other generations?
Yeah. And it's a mistrust too. So I did a little research. So there was a Gallup poll that they rank trust in institutions among generations. And Gen Z's is super interesting because their number one that they trust the most, the institution, is science, which is not surprising, especially post-pandemic, where they're young in that. The medical system is next, followed by the military, which is really interesting. But the ones that they trust the least are presidency, the news, Congress, and then large tech companies, which is interesting because they are large tech companies' biggest market. Yeah. But once again, you're not seeing that connection. So I think there's it's not like a cynicism, correct, like other generations. It's just truly like, you just have to prove something to me. Yeah. And if you can prove that thing to me, then I'm bought in pretty much.
Prove that it's authentic. It's real. It's true. You're not lying to me. Yeah. So which is a good thing to say, hey, I need you to prove this to me.
Yeah. And for the church, you're like, that means that we have to have healthy people in our church who are willing to step out into those relationships, because the proof is in the quality of a relationship of just, that's what it is. Yeah. It's not like we're not offering them something more than just, like an actual connection, which Christians should be able to do really, really well.
Yeah, that's really helpful to consider, because if you think of the posture kind of even apologetically of how you're entering in, if there's an assumption that someone's cynical, that might adjust, not entirely, but it might adjust a little bit of how you're going to try to engage. But if it's not so much cynicism, but it is, hey, I'm looking for authenticity, I want to know you're real here, that can also be helpful sort of as you think about the way to posture yourself or kind of think of those inroads. Because I know my default is to assume cynicism. And I think, again, that's probably partly because
that's because we're Generation X,
Generation X. But that I'm always like, if there's someone who's skeptical or someone who's maybe young in their faith or whatever, there's a cynicism I have to overcome. Where it's not so much that, it's just more, they're working through, is this real? Is this authentic? Or am I being lied to?
Yeah.
And so that's a helpful distinction.
When you think of like Gen Z's brain, I think of this at church, and you think they've arrived at a destination of what they think about your church or anything or what you're teaching. Just see their like confused look as like pending. Like they're literally just waiting. They're just waiting for the thing. Like Dusty said, low bar, invite Gen Z in. They will be there. They won't trust it. And then until it's proven. And then it's like, well, what's being proven? Quality connection. And then like, are you who you say you are?
That's good.
I was really encouraged by my son, the ministry he's a part of just down the road in Lincoln. Last year, there was 300-ish students at their fall retreat. And this year, there were 600 students at their fall retreat. And to your point there, E.Beth, I think they just want to be invited to something. So whereas like a decade ago, it was kind of like, I don't know if I want to come to your thing. You're kind of into Jesus. Now they're like, yeah, sure, I'll come to your thing, and then I'll let you know when I'm out. If I don't like it, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
And then they end up getting converted and baptized. It's
Praise the
beautiful.
Lord.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fun. There's hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for engaging this topic with us, E.Beth. It's great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for
having me.
Thanks for helping us think about how Gen Z is primed for spiritual renewal.
The goal of this podcast is to equip our own church for discipleship and mission. So if you're a Christian or a church leader in another context, we thank you for listening in. And we pray that this conversation might be helpful to you as you minister in your context. We always love to hear from listeners, so if you have thoughts, questions, or future podcast topics, send an email to podcast@cdomaha.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of the Wednesday Conversation.